blood relations. The morning air over the park was crisp and sharp, carrying with it the faint, rustling whisper of fallen oak leaves moving lazily across the damp grass. On a wooden bench near the duck pond, a woman sat alone, her coat buttoned tight against the early chill, looking absent-mindedly at the ripples on the water. A short distance away, behind the shadow of a broad pine tree, two figures stood watching her. "Now, Kelly, wait," the young man said, reaching out to gently catch her arm as she took an impulsive step forward. "Now, come on, honey, slow down. Look, come on, what were you gonna do? Just walk up to her and say, 'Hi, Mom, I'm the baby you gave up for adoption 20 years ago?'" The girl turned her face toward him, her cheeks flushed red from the morning wind and the sharp spike of nervous anxiety that had been building inside her chest for days. "It's just that I've been so nervous about meeting her. I guess I just wanted to get it over with before I lost my nerve." "I'm sure I understand that," he replied, his voice soft, steady, and full of quiet patience. "But I haven't talked to the lady yet. I'm not even positive she's the right one. And even if she is, I still think it's best if I go over and speak to her alone first to make sure she wants to see me. Now, Kelly, my way, please." She hesitated, looking back toward the lone bench across the lawn, then sighed and nodded her head. "Okay, I'll try not to be too long." "Yes, please," he said with an encouraging smile before turning to walk slowly down the winding paved path toward the pond. Inside the quiet office downtown, the gentle hum of the street traffic outside felt distant and muffled. Barnaby Jones sat behind his heavy oak desk, leaning back slightly as he adjusted his spectacles and looked across at the young woman sitting in the armchair opposite him. She held her purse tightly on her lap, her knuckles pale against the leather. "Well, I'll do my best to pick up where Marvin Gates left off," Barnaby said softly, his voice rich with a measured, calm warmth. "But I sure wish he were here to finish up." Kelly Anderson looked down at her hands, her voice quiet when she spoke. "After it happened, I gave some thought to forgetting the whole thing. But then his wife, his widow, phoned and gave me your name. Just what was it that Marv was looking into for you, Miss Anderson?" "He was trying to find someone for me," she said, raising her eyes. "My mother." "Your mother?" Barnaby tilted his head slightly, peering over the rim of his glasses. "I remember reading somewhere that your mother and father were killed in an air crash." "They weren't my real parents," she said gently.
"I'm adopted."
"I'm sorry, I didn't know." "Neither did I, until their lawyer gave me a letter that they had left with their will." "Must have been a shock," she murmured, offering a small, wistful smile. "Anyway, they sent the letter that said they didn't know who my real father was, but they had this with my mother's name on it." "Mother's name, Mary Renee Wilson." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper, smoothing it flat on the desk between them. "This is a photocopy. Do you have the original?" "No," Kelly admitted, shaking her head. "I'd like to believe that my real mother kept the original herself, to remember the baby that she had to give up." Barnaby looked at the paper, reading the typed names and dates before looking back at her with a gentle nod. "That's logical. I can believe that's the way it happened. According to this, my mother was young, only 17 when I was born," Kelly continued, her voice taking on a thoughtful, reflective tone. "It's strange. I wasn't surprised to find out that I'd been adopted. I think I suspected it from when I was a little girl. Not that my adopted mother and father didn't do everything to make me feel like their own child. They did." Barnaby gathered the papers together carefully. "Will you let me know how it's going, Mr. Jones?" she asked. "The instant I get any information, I will give you a call," Barnaby assured her. "But I can't help wondering, 20 years. Are you sure you want to stir around in the past after all this time?" "No," Kelly confessed, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and deep hesitation. "I'm not sure I want to, but I feel as though I have to." Miles away, in a cramped, dimly lit kitchen on the edge of town, the morning sun filtered through grimy window panes, casting long streaks of yellow light across an unwashed table. Grant Brockman tossed a heavy ring of keys onto the counter with a loud clatter and pulled open the small refrigerator. "Took me all night to get rid of the car and get a ride back into town," Grant muttered, leaning against the counter as he cracked open a dark bottle. "Any more beer in the house?" "No, it's the last one," Anita said without looking up from the kitchen table, where she was flipping through the morning newspaper. Grant took a long pull from the bottle and pointed a finger at the folded paper in her hands. There was an item in the morning paper about that detective. Did you have to kill him? Anita turned her head sharply, her dark eyes narrowing. He was about to deliver the girl right into your sister's lap. He got that close? I told you gave him too much when you talk with him, Grant snapped, his posture stiffening. That was before we had this idea, Anita countered defensively, slamming her palm lightly on the table. Man comes to the door. He's trying to locate my sister Mary.
I didn't know what it was all about then.
Well, it never would have worked with that detective walking around anyway, Grant said, tossing the empty bottle into the trash. No, nobody will ever know he came here first. And as far as the girl is concerned, she still doesn't know what her mother looks like. Did you call Mary yet? Come on, Anita. Mary's your part of the deal. Oh, I told you we haven't spoken to each other for 8 years, Anita groaned, turning her face away in annoyance. I don't care if it's been 80, Grant barked, stepping closer and leaning over the back of her chair. I found out that little girl just inherited a few years back. She's got a few $1 million, and she's looking for a mother. Anita let out a long, heavy breath, rubbing her temples with her fingers. All right. I'll call her just as soon as I finish the wash. No, Grant said, a slow, scheming grin spreading across his face. I've got a better idea. I'll go get cleaned up, and then you and I will go see her, face to face. Meanwhile, in the quiet back office of the detective agency, Betty Jones sat at her desk, carefully organizing a small pile of personal items spread out on a wooden tray. Barnaby stood near the window, sipping a cup of black coffee while looking at a small spiral-bound notebook. Here's the stuff Marv Gates had on him when he was hit, Betty said, holding up each item in turn. One wallet, one pocket notebook, assorted keys, small change. Did you check on that other matter? Oh, yeah, Barnaby replied, walking over to sit on the edge of her desk. There's an old police record on a Mary Renee Wilson. Computer came up empty. Did I miss something in Marv's casebook? There seems to be just a bunch of figures.
Mean anything to you?
No, Betty said, scanning the neat lines of numbers written in red ink. Just mileage and expenses, about all I could figure. Well, maybe Emily Cage can make some sense out of it. Could I have copies of the last few pages? Sure, if you want. Barnaby nodded. You check on the hit and run? Yeah, Betty answered, picking up a manila folder. Just that it was a 1972 or 1973 black four-door sedan. Nobody got a make or a license. You can pick up copies of this at the duty desk in about 10 minutes. I'll pick it all up then, Barnaby said, reaching for his coat. Okay. Thank you, Lieutenant. Yeah. Out in a quiet, secluded canyon road surrounded by tall eucalyptus trees, a dust-covered sedan pulled up near the front steps of a weathered wooden bungalow. Grant stepped out of the driver's seat, smoothing down the lapels of his jacket before turning to glance at Anita, who sat pale and rigid in the passenger seat. I know I'm gonna blow it, Anita whispered, her hands shaking slightly as she gripped her purse. She'll tell me to get lost. I'll tell her to go to hell. Okay, Grant said with a dry, confidence-filled chuckle. I was a pretty fair used car salesman. Let's see if I can sell a you sister. He walked up the gravel path, his shoes crunching softly, and knocked firmly on the wooden front door. After a few moments, the door opened a crack, revealing a middle-aged woman with soft, gentle features and hair pulled back in a neat bun. Yes? She asked cautiously. Mary? Mary Wilson? Yes, who are you? Grant's the name, he said, laying on a warm, polite smile. Grant Brockman. I'm a friend of Anita. Your sister, Anita? Mary's eyes widened slightly, a sudden shadow of caution crossing her face. I know who you mean. What about Anita? Look, Miss Wilson, Mary, Grant said, leaning against the doorframe in a relaxed, friendly manner. I know you and Anita have had your differences over the years. That's putting it mildly, Mary said quietly, looking down at the porch floor. But what you may not know is how much Anita blames herself for the trouble between you, Grant continued smoothly, his voice dropping to a sympathetic pitch. And she wants more than anything else to make up with you. Fact is, she's right there. In the car. Anita's come here to make up? Mary asked, looking past him toward the vehicle parked near the gate. She was afraid to come to the door with me, Grant explained with a small shrug. She lost her nerve at the last minute. Mr. Brockman, how come you're so interested in Anita and me making up? Mary asked, her tone still searching, cautious. Well, that's easy, Grant said, grinning warmly. I want to marry the girl. But she's got this cloud hanging over her because of her problems with you. Mary, she made it that far. And it took a lot of effort for her to do it, too. Now, how about you? Can't you find enough forgiveness to meet her halfway? Mary stared at him for a long moment, then turned her eyes toward the car. She took a deep breath, stepped off the porch, and walked slowly toward the driveway. Anita slowly pushed the car door open and stepped out onto the gravel. You're looking good, Mary, Anita said softly, her voice carrying a nervous tremor. You too, Anita, Mary replied, pausing a few feet away. You know, I can't think of a darn thing to say. Grant caught up to them, slapping his hands together cheerfully. Look, it's silly standing outside. Would you and Mr. Brockman like to come in for a while? Mary asked, offering a hesitant, welcoming smile. Sure, Grant replied instantly. I mean, why not? Inside Barnaby's office, Emily Cage was carefully leafing through the loose-leaf pages from Marvin Gate's notebook while Barnaby stood by the window, watching the street below. Honestly, some of this stuff's been in Marv's desk since before I met him, Emily said, shaking her head with a faint smile. You'd think he'd throw something away once in a while. You know, I don't know what to do about the Anderson case. Marv had been working on that for almost 10 days, and— Oh, I've already taken care of that, Barnaby said, walking back over to her desk. I called Kelly Anderson and told her to send the entire investigation fee to you. Oh, no argument, Emily protested gently. That's the way we do in this business, Barnaby insisted warmly. One man takes over another man's job. We have a gentleman's agreement. Marv must have done it a dozen times. I don't believe that one bit, Barnaby. Emily smiled softly, her eyes warming. It's God's honor, Barnaby grinned. All right. I won't pretend I can't use the money. Thank you. Now, when I picked up Marv's personal effects from police headquarters, I took the liberty of having several pages of his casebook copied. Now, it didn't make too much sense to me, but you take a look at it. Anything in there that applies to the Anderson case? No, Emily sighed, pointing to the scribbled entries. Just expense items.
Hours.
Mileage on his car.
I'm sorry.
What about these letters? Barnaby asked, leaning over her shoulder to point at 2 capitalized characters near the margin.
E.D.
Could be initials, or it could mean Ed. There was an Ed, Emily recalled, tapping her cheek thoughtfully.
Flynn. Ed Flynn.
Marv said he was a forest ranger, said he'd been very helpful. Did he ever happen to mention where Ed Flynn worked? Oh, I can't recall, she admitted. Hold it, Barnaby, Betty interrupted, stepping into the room with a small slip of paper in her hand. I stopped by the phone company today. Closed out the car phone account. Local call. Local. Except this one.
Cleary.
Cleary, Barnaby repeated, nodding slowly. Isn't that up near Angeles National Forest? I guess it wouldn't take long for the Forestry Service to tell us whether they have a ranger named Ed Flynn stationed up there. Back at the Canyon bungalow, the afternoon sun had begun to cast long, golden shadows across the wood-paneled living room. Anita stood in the kitchen doorway, holding a tray with 2 teacups, looking over at Mary, who was dusting the mantelpiece. Grant's gonna take a little nap before supper, I think, Anita said gently. He didn't get much rest last night. He's very good-looking, Mary remarked, turning around with a soft smile. How long have you been seeing him? Seeing him? Anita echoed with a dry laugh. We've been living together for almost a year, if that's what you mean. Times certainly change, don't they? Mary said, looking out the window at the dense wall of pine trees. Not up here, they don't, Anita replied, sitting at the small wooden table. I keep expecting to hear Mama's voice yelling for her medicine from her bedroom. Mary, I know you must still hate me for leaving you alone with all that. I just couldn't take it. It's not so bad anymore with Mama gone, Mary said softly, sitting across from her sister. I've really come to love this old place. You've been living here all alone all these years, and neither